Show, as I said, a little bit of a different show today, and there's no way I could have done a show today and not tried to stress the impact that Gerald White had on this community. No way, just couldn't be done. We got our guest standing by, but real quick, just to kind of set the tone for those that didn't know Gerald, didn't know who he was, just wondering the details. Gerald White was kind of the first in my lifetime. I know we had some stars in the early 70s, John Reebok, and there were guys back in the 60s. I get it. But in my lifetime, the first true basketball superstar in this area was Gerald White. The first high school games I ever went to was his senior year. Luckily, my grandparents lived right near Richmond Academy. And as a 12-year-old, I just, like I said, to me, he was Michael Jordan. I mean, he was incredible. And then he goes on to play at Auburn. He was a 4-year starter at point guard. He's still the school's all-time assist leader. Played with Charles Barkley, played with Chuck Person, helped lead them to the Elite Eight in 1987. And that year, he came home that summer and did a basketball camp, and that was the first time I got to meet him because I attended that camp, thanks to Gerald. I didn't have enough money to go to the camp. Single mom, I didn't have cash, didn't have money. I had like $30, and I went to the camp anyway and said, "Hey, can I just come for one day?" And Gerald just said, "Man, just be here every morning." And from that point on, we were friends. From that point on, he constantly was doing little things to help me, and he's done that for countless others. Joining us to talk about Gerald and kind of reflect a little bit on his life and his impact is the basketball coach, of course, from Augusta University, longtime friends with Gerald as well, Dip Mitrus. Coach, how are you?
Hey, Ash, how you doing? Doing well.
I said to somebody today, I love having Dip on. He's one of my favorite guests, and this is going to be a little different, but I appreciate you so much being on, and you said in your text, anything for G. White, and I think that's what we all kind of feel, right?
It is. I didn't know, listening to you talk about Gerald's high school career, I didn't meet him until he had finished playing at Auburn. And, we shared an office together at the old Augusta College gym.
Yep.
And I think I can safely say this. In the last 35 years, anybody who dribbled a basketball in the CSRA was influenced by Gerald White.
Yep.
I mean, listen, your story, I thought about this. I wasn't the head coach here, and I came to Gerald's All-Star game. I was the coach at Belmont Abbey.
Yeah.
I was sitting in Christenberry Fieldhouse, and I'm watching this All-Star game.
I know what you. I think I know the moment, and I can't wait. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm like, who is A.J. Bowman?
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, I'm the head coach at Augusta University, and it's all because of Gerald's All-Star game and the countless stories and. Oh, man, it's just...
Yeah, and of course...
It was a tough night last night.
You bring in A.J., and of course A.J. becomes a star, carries you to a national championship game, and what a story there. And, yeah, you're right. I remember that night because he jumped over a table or something, and I remember you remarked, and we all died laughing at your remark. And but the crazy thing to me, you talk about the impact. There can't be a human being that I know that has more contacts in his phone than Gerald. He was always on his phone. He knew everybody from every area of basketball or walk of life, it seemed like. He was always on the phone. He was always on the go. He always had something coming up. He was always working out a player, and he was, like I said, always on the go.
Well, I'll tell you another odd story. I was talking to my daughter today, and she goes, I shot my free throws because what Gerald White taught me in high school. I'm like, I'm your dad. I'm a college coach. She said, well, Gerald told me to bend my knees and shoot one motion.
Yeah.
And she goes, I remember it was in your gym. I was in, I don't know what, she was probably 8th or 9th grade. And I always shot my free throws that way.
That's great.
I mean, it's unbelievable. You think about actually, there's not a kid who, like I said, dribbled a basketball that didn't play in one of Gerald's All-Star games. There's not 2 or 3. You go from middle school to junior. I mean, it's...
And also the camps, the people, one of the guys that works with me, I knew he was a basketball fan in the area, and today I just wanted to mention. I said, "Hey, did you know Gerald White?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I told him, and he had went to Gerald's camp every year from like second grade through like eighth grade. And it's just so many people. Gerald White camp was, somebody posted, that was the thing to do in the summer. And he's right. And I'll tell you, one of the things that was funny to me too, I mentioned he had a big impact, and he did far more for me than I did for him. And Lord knows he did that for a lot of people. But one of the things that stood out to me was just funny. He had that magnetic personality. And even a little thing I watched at one of the camps when I came back to help after I was done playing and all that, he was just something simple, but it was how well he did it. He would play Simon Says with the kids. Did you ever watch him do that?
Yes.
Oh my God. He was like a magician with it. He just, like I said, he just had that magnetic personality, man.
And had an unbelievable ability to get guys in the gym and work on their skills. And this is kind of before everybody had a workout guy. Okay, him and Mike Curry would have these, I don't know if I'll call them camps. I mean, it was for older guys who were playing in college and playing professionally. And Gerald could get guys in the gym and work with them and keep the intensity level up by going, okay, you pick up the best player of this game and you pick up full court. Like it was. He had an unbelievable talent. He's just a special talent with people. And, the other thing about Gerald is, this a terrible thing, and people on the phone going back and forth. If you ever got in a car with Gerald White to go somewhere, you were gone for 3 or 4 hours. I don't know if you remember that. Yeah. Hey, you want to run over here and get something? And then 3 or 4 hours later, you're like, hey, Gerald, we going back to where we were.
And Cal Rowland, great area player that played for Gerald at VCU. I saw where he posted something today, and he brought up the fact that if you ever went to eat with Gerald, you ate good because everywhere he went, he knew a little dive, and that's so Gerald, because he did. He knew everybody. Everybody was his friend, and so he had those places. There's no doubt. And like I said, the impact he had is incredible, and I know you know that, and you saw that firsthand. But he also. He could have, if he wanted to pursue, I think he could have had an even bigger career as a coach. I think he really enjoyed the teaching aspect. Am I wrong there?
He did, and really, it's funny you said that. He was so into giving back to people. He was a connector. Okay, he could connect everybody in a gym together. And I think college coaching has obviously changed through the years. But when Gerald was in it, you have to spend so much time away from people. You're not connecting to people It's really strange because when he was at VCU, there were not times where I would go more than a week without talking to him. I talked to him last week, and it was always about basketball related. I remember I was assistant coach. Me and Gerald would shoot for after practice to who would drive to the Charlotte Hornets game because I had tickets to the Hornets games. And Ryan Small playing 3-on-3 after practice in the old gym going sideways, opening the gym up and. Man, he just, anytime that ball bounced, and I remember Gerald telling a story, and I wasn't around then, about riding a bike, him and Mike Stokes to different parks to play in. Yeah. I mean, it's, like I said, I don't think there's a person that's played basketball, and plus all the other people. Yeah, Gerald touched. No doubt, because it wasn't just basketball. It was any student, any kid that needed something. I mean, think about how many people between Michael Curry and Gerald got basketball shoes or basketball socks, stuff that they couldn't afford. They made sure they got them, especially if there was a big kid who wore like an unusual size. Gerald would make sure they got shoes. Well, actually, it's funny you say that because I have a good friend of mine who works for the Pelicans, and literally he gives me stuff, and I'll put a bag aside. Just put a bag aside for Gerald. I go, hey man, when you come in town, just come by the house. And I would just give him a bag of stuff because I knew he
he'd put it to good use. He'd put it to good use. Yeah, absolutely. And we could go on and on for days about all these things. And you talk about him as a player because obviously he was a great player. And he got drafted by the Dallas Mavericks in the 7th round. Unfortunately for him, they picked Steve Alford in the 1st round. But from everything I heard, he was putting it to Steve pretty good in camp, but they're not going to cut the 1st round guy, right?
No, they're not. I think if that's correct, Steve Alford was an Olympian too. I think.
Yeah, that's true.
And what's odd is I didn't know Gerald then, but in all my years, he never brought it up, was never bitter about Steve Alford, never bitter about the process.
The only time I had to dig it, me as a stat and sports geek, I had to dig it out of him because I asked him about camp because it was so. Again, I look at that and I look at guys that come close to making it and don't and decide to, Rich Poitras is one in baseball that was so close to making it to the big leagues and decided to move home. And everybody's got different reasons. But I asked Gerald about like why didn't you pursue it further or whatever? And he obviously found his calling, no question about it.
Yes. Like I said, I wasn't around when Gerald was a high school player. I was around after his college career. But, you're right, the basketball camps, the all-star games, just everything he did for people. And recently he's added cheerleaders to it. I mean, he wanted to touch people, and he did in so many different ways. And I mean, I texted a few of the guys that Gerald kind of helped me get at Augusta. And they were just floored last night. They're like, oh, my goodness. And, Gerald never talked about anything about himself. Never. Okay, if you think about that, and funny, one guy referred to him as a secret squirrel, okay? You really didn't know what Gerald was, not in a bad sense, but he knew, he would call my house here, back when we used to have house phones, and he would talk to my wife, talk to Heather 10 minutes before, he's like, oh, yeah, dip around, and when they saw each other in November, she's like, hey, I miss you calling the house and talking to me,
so great.
Because she would pick up the phone, and just, no, it's one of those phone numbers, I know it by heart. It's never changed, and it's very sad. Sad.
You hear the saying all the time. He's good people. That's the epitome of it right there.
Yes, no doubt.
Coach, man, thank you so much. I know everybody appreciates you. Kind of sharing your stories about Gerald. And I appreciate it more than you know. And
let me tell you this, because I was
absolutely
Coach Bryant before you called. They're going to do a graveside service. It sounds like next weekend in Augusta. I'm not sure the details, but Clint just actually called me a few minutes ago.
Okay.
And, so obviously people, when the word gets out, there's going to be a lot of people there that,
Oh yeah, and certainly we'll share that information when we get it as well for anybody that would like to attend. Because I know I even had some people from out of town messaging me asking if they could listen online because they wanted to hear some of the stories, and so we'll definitely get that word out. Thanks, Coach.
Yep. All right. All
right. Take care, man. Appreciate you so much. That is Dip Mitrus, the head basketball coach at Augusta University, former colleague of Gerald's, and appreciate him more than he knows. Great man there, and appreciate him sharing some of the stories about Gerald. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk to another one of Gerald's friends and a person he had an impact on. This person was a great player at Gerald's alma mater, Richmond Academy. He went on to become a star at Augusta College then. Keenan Mann will be with us right after this timeout.
Here's your host, AB.
All right, folks, welcome back into the Thursday Night Huddle with Ashley Brown. And tonight, a special night as we salute and honor Gerald White, one of the all-time greats, not just a player, but human being, and the impact he had in this community on the young athletes, just immeasurable. We've been telling stories, and we're going to continue to do that. Joining us next on the line, I mentioned this, he was a basketball star at Richmond Academy, Gerald's alma mater. He went on to star at Augusta College, where he's one of the all-time greats there, number retired and everything. He might not remember this, but I remember it vividly. I met him, or saw him at least for the first time, this guest, at Gerald White basketball camp the summer before my junior year, or it was either the summer before my sophomore or junior. I got to say junior because that was 87. That's when he finished Auburn. And the gentleman that we have coming on the show was a year ahead of me in school, and he won. We had like a hot shot competition, and he won it for the seniors, and I won it for the younger guys, or maybe he just made littler guys because he was a lot taller than me back then and still is. The great Keenan Mann is with us. Keenan, how are you, sir?
I'm doing as good as I can do under the circumstances, baby.
I know, man. That's what I just said with Dip. Dip is always such a fun guest to have on the show, but in this time, and so I had to keep telling myself today, let's be happy and celebrate Gerald's life, because he wouldn't want us being sad, and it's just tough, though, and I know it's tough for you. Talk a little bit about Gerald's impact on you, and I know you've known him for a long, long time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate you letting me ramble here for just a few minutes.
For sure. Go ahead.
That you had Dip on. Most of the people that I know in Augusta, I know because of Gerald White. And I didn't think of that till last night, but I was talking to Chad Cook.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, he's the real link between the two of us. And it just occurred to me that when you were just talking to Dip, we were playing pickup like we used to back in the day, and in the old gym. And afterwards, I was working out. It was just me and Gerald in the gym working out. And we walk out, and Gerald says, "Hey," and Dip's just pulling up in that old Mazda 323 hatchback he used to drive back then. And Gerald says, "Hey, this is Dip. He's the new assistant coach." And so literally he introduced me to Dip, but he's responsible for a lot of the people that I knew. And so I'll just go back, and it just kind of hit me that everybody that I know is from Gerald. And so in that, he was one of the guys for me that kind of altered. We all were kind of walking on a path, and then something happens or somebody happens to us, and our course gets altered. Gerald was one of those guys for me. I mean, the first time I met him, and I'm gonna. You just mentioned something that I'm gonna refer to here. The first time I met him, he was on break from Auburn. He was still playing there, and I was a junior at Richmond. And when he showed up, Coach Brock would let him take over practice. And I talked to Chuck Graham last night.
Yeah.
Who was my teammate back in the day, and he said, that Gerald was probably responsible for 1,500 of the points that Chuck scored at Richmond, because he put in some plays that allowed Chuck to exploit his leaping ability and all that stuff.
Well, so I have Gerald to blame for Chuck dunking on us all those times.
Exactly. I was one of the guys that I used to throw the lob to.
Yeah.
But he also put in these drills. I mean, they were just brutal drills. There's two that I remember in particular that were for big men, and I don't know that if people still do them or not. But boy, we did them, and I hated it at the time. But it made me so much better looking back.
Yeah.
And now the funniest thing though is he that same day, the first time I met him, he challenged me to a one-on-one, and at that time I thought I was a decent player, and I literally could not get around, not create space. I couldn't get around. I didn't get a shot off. I still remember that. And then, like you just said, that summer between my junior and senior, so you were a year behind me, I guess.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Gerald started that basketball camp, and Richmond players. You showed up with $30. Us Richmond players got to go for free. So,
well, hey, he didn't take the $30, which is the great thing. And, hey, Lord knows I'm glad because I needed it.
so, and most of the guys from around here went to that camp. And back then, you said hot shot. He had three trophies that he gave out. One was for the MVP, and one was for the team champion, and one was for the one-on-one champion.
Yeah.
And I changed my part of my Facebook profile today to reflect that. I was the inaugural MVP and team champion. Now, Chuck was there too. Now, and he was, everybody knew, and they were right. Chuck was the guy.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning of the week, it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be that guy. And but I ended up with the trophy. And I know that's kind of Al Bundy poke high of me to mention that.
No, this is great stuff, man. Yeah,
there's a point.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody recalled or either knew or recalled, maybe Chuck, till just now that I won those two things. And it doesn't mean anything. It only meant something to me at that time.
Yeah.
I only have a few. I've won a few trophies by this time, but I only have a few that I kept. And those two trophies are in my case, and that's back to Gerald, changing the course of my life. Getting that MVP trophy at that camp with those players, it was huge for me. And people, it was Gerald was the head guy, but he also had, camp counselors like Mike Stokes and Mike Curry were there. So these guys looked at me and said, you know what? Yeah, we all know about Chuck, but this guy is a pretty good player too. And that was a seminal moment. Now, that started a run for me that ended with my jersey in the rafters up the street.
That's so great to hear, Keenan. And hey, that gave you I'll never forget this. I was such a fan, even as a player when I played. I remember your senior year, Chuck's junior year. I remember looking at the newspaper after y'all's first game of the season. If I'm wrong, I maybe I'm getting Alzheimer's, because I remember it like it was yesterday, looking in the paper, really, in all honesty, looking to see what Chuck did. And Keenan Mann I think you had 35 that first game your senior year. I could be wrong.
Yeah, there's a 3-point line, so I had 38. You missed
38. I missed one. I knew you had a big, because I remember looking and going, "Oh man, Keenan had a bit, had a monster game." So, man, it was. I so much appreciate you sharing that. And Chad, I'm going to read through a list in a little while on the show that Chad sent me of all the people that he's friends with now. That, like you said, he wouldn't have known. Gerald knew so many people. His tentacles were all throughout the Southeast. And you're right. He's kind of the bridge between all of us. And it's just tremendous that we've all, most of us have stayed friends. I don't play ball anymore, and I'm not in that, so I don't go to the camps and all that like I used to. But I still, the minute I see somebody, we were able to chat it up, whether it's Dino Yarborough or one of the Marcus Reynolds or whoever,
Marcus, Keith, but all those guys, we know because of Gerald White. I wouldn't know any of those guys. And not only I wouldn't know them, I wouldn't have ended up, doing what I did, as small as it was, if I had not met Gerald and then met all those guys. So.
Yep. Well, Keenan, like I said, this was not the there's better circumstances to talk to you about basketball than this, but are certainly less sad. But I so much appreciate you sharing some stories about Gerald and letting everybody know the impact. As Coach pointed out, Coach Mitrus, there's not a player that has come through the CSRA, at least in the last 35 years, that Gerald has not impacted in some way. Absolutely, positively, including you.
Absolutely.
Well, Keenan, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you being with us tonight, man, more than you know.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Keenan Mann, former great basketball player himself, both at ARC and Augusta College. And I'm going to do this before we take the break real quick. And then after the break, I've got tons of stories I could tell, but I said I would open it up to phone calls, so I'll do just that. But I did want to read this. Chad Cook sent me this. He said, I made a list of people I can remember meeting for the very first time at Gerald White basketball camp. What's remarkable is that to this day, I've remained friends and in contact with almost all of them. Obviously, Gerald White, Keenan Mann, Ricky Moore, Mike Stokes. Man, love me some Mike Stokes. Michael Curry, of course, played in the NBA. Chuck Graham, Carlos Carter, Tim Daniels, Brian Schmall, Willie Cunningham, Lamont Johnson. Man, I remember Lamont at Glen Hills. So fun to watch. Shane Pangle, Hubert McDonald, Thad Hood, Renwick Lee. Renwick Lee, one of the best people, man. I worked camps and all-star games with him. Such a good dude. Frank Clark, Michael Cooper, Brinkley Ruffin, Hawthorne Welcher, Melvin McCreary, Ty Shine, Will Avery. And that list is probably, if he keeps digging, he can find many, many more. And a lot of those names I'm friends with, a lot of them because of Gerald. Some of the ones that came later, like William Avery, I met because of the radio, but a lot of them because of Gerald. He, like I said, a massive, massive, massive impact on this community. I'm going to take a time out. When I come back for the final segment, we're going to open the phone lines to you. I do want to really quickly recognize when we get back our CSRA Performer of the Week, Harlem baseball player, but it's not their star going to Clemson. They all had a good game, it seemed like, in the opening round of the state playoffs, but we'll tell you who our pick was, brought to you by Culpeper Ace Hardware right after this timeout.
It's WGAC's Thursday Huddle, and it's powered by Hardwood Floors and More on News Talk and Information, WGAC.
All right, welcome back, folks. Ashley Brown with you. The phone lines are open if you'd like to share, thoughts, any kind of stories, any kind of info about Gerald White. I understand I had several people comment to me and say, I don't know that I could come on and talk, but they're hurting. A lot of people are. He was close to so many people. And like I said, he was just that infectious smile, and who he was made you feel like you were the most important person in his life when he was around you. Gerald White, as we honor him tonight. I do want to recognize, though, our Culpeper Ace Hardware Performer of the Week very quickly. Harlem baseball standout Tyler Simmons. He's only a junior. He's committed to USC Aiken. And in their opening round of the state playoffs, they beat Long County in a pair of games, 10-4 and 11-1. And in those two games, He went 4 for 6. He also walked 3 times, so he reached base 7 out of 9 times. He had a home run, 2 triples, and 7 RBIs, including 3 for 3 with 5 ribbies in the second game. So congratulations to him, and just a phenomenal performance in that opening round of the playoffs. Another former Richmond Academy standout, Prentice Peabody, is listening out in Dallas. And you're right, Prentice, sad day, and I appreciate you reaching out and letting us know you're listening in on the website. So, look, and by the way, I did during the break go to Keenan's Facebook page, and he does have those trophies, which is so cool. Those are from 1987, the summer of 1987, and he still got them today because I forgot that first camp until I saw that trophy. It was the Gerald White basketball camp, but it was the White Ford basketball camp. His running mate, the other guard at Auburn with Gerald, was Frank Ford, and they were very good friends. And I forgot that he had come back and helped him with camp early on. And then later, Michael Curry helped. And then Gerald always had somebody, involved and, brought so many folks together. And there's so many people out there that have reached out today. And somebody asked, was I going to post last night? And I said, man, I feel funny. It's, I don't want to do that. Certainly, I don't want to make this in any way about me, but I'm glad this morning I decided to post something on social media and share some of the stories I had, because everybody then started sharing what Gerald had done for them or meant to them or whatever. And there's, again, thousands. And then that's not an exaggeration over the last 36 years, because 87 is when he finished at Auburn and started coming back doing camps and doing things here. And he would, he coached in Virginia for a time, but man, he made those trips from Richmond back to Augusta every summer. He lived in Atlanta briefly, and Lord knows he made the trek back and forth to Atlanta probably more than most. But so glad we're getting a chance to kind of honor him. We've got Jared standing by. Jared, you're on the show. What's up? Oh, I pushed the wrong button. I'm sorry, Jared. Or can you do it in there? There you go. Okay, sorry about that. Jared, you're on. Go ahead, buddy.
Hey, thanks, Ashley. First-time caller, long-time listener. I played at Augusta, what was then Augusta College, with Dip was my position coach, and G. White was one of our other position coaches, and Keenan is one of my all-time favorite teammates. Was
your last name Haas or Haas?
No, it's actually DeBose.
DeBose. Oh, that's right. Okay, I remember it now. I remember you being on the roster. I played at Columbus State. I was a year behind you guys, but I remember your name from the roster for sure. So, man, thank you. Yeah, thank you for reaching out, man.
Well, my name followed or preceded D&P a lot.
Hey, mine did too. Mine did too, brother.
And if anybody's listening from Augusta or Augusta State, they would crack up knowing that was like, yeah, that's right. But was very sad to hear about G. White's passing. I was one of those guys that went to Coach Bryant's camp and G. White's camp before I actually attended Augusta College and actually played. Dip was my position coach. And Keenan was one of my all-time heroes on the court and off the court, because he was just an amazing fella. Yeah. Whether he was in Jersey or whether he wasn't. And just so sad to hear about G. White's passing. But I remember one time specifically we were on a road trip, and G. White had a couple of us in a restaurant before. It was either pregame or postgame meal. And he said, there's nothing like finishing college. There's nothing like finishing and saying, this is it. I don't have to go back unless I choose to go back. And that always sat with me in a different way than it would with most people. Yeah. Because I think he knew the value of education as well as the athletic implication of it. But he just always was one of those guys that just kind of thought a step ahead, like a chess player, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Yep.
And I was so sad to hear that. I've communicated with Keenan over the years. I've run into Dip when he was coaching different, players and teams over the years, and could not be more thankful for the years that I've spent with Augusta College Jaguars. And I just wanted to call in and say thank you for doing this for G. White, because, gosh, what a soul that we've lost way too early, because I didn't grow up in the Augusta area, but, geez, he made a serious impact on me in a very short period of time.
Well, thank you for sharing so much, Jerry. We appreciate it, buddy. Take care.
All right. Thank you, Ashley.
All right. There you go. Phone's open if you want to reach out. We got a minute or two here. 706-863-5800. And I mentioned the story of Gerald, the basketball camp, how he let me go to the camp. I didn't have the money to go, and he did that for so many kids, so many people. But he also helped. One of the biggest things he did, he helped so many kids get to college, get into college, get into the right college, whether they were being recruited heavily, not recruited at all. He was always working, and in my case, I was certainly was not a heavy recruit, a big time recruit for Columbus State at all, not whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it was that, probably barely were they even going to take me and offer me a little bit of money. But I know that my coach at Columbus State was Herb Green. Herb Green had coached at Auburn before Gerald was there, but he was a longtime assistant, had played at Auburn, and was a longtime assistant for Sonny Smith, knew Gerald very well. And he told me on my first trip to Columbus, he said, man, you got somebody I really respect in your corner. And I said, who? And he said, Gerald White. And I said, oh, yes, sir. I've known Coach White. I went to his camp when I was in high school. And this was the early 90s, so I'd only known Gerald for a short period of time. But he had told Coach Green that, if he took me, one, he was never going to have any problems with me. Two, I was going to work my butt off. And, well, that was it. He didn't know how good a player I was going to be. But he said, no, he told the coach, he said, he's a good kid. He's not going to be a problem. He's going to work his tail off for you. And that is basically what sealed it, and, them to kind of take a shot on me and let me be on the team. And again, I wasn't a star player, wasn't even a starter, played sparingly. But I probably wouldn't even got the chance to play at Columbus after my JUCO years if it had not been for Gerald White. So, and like I said, there are countless people who could repeat that same story. And last, I'm going to leave you with this. We've talked about his being a standout player at ARC and at Auburn. We talked about his camps. We talked about his all-star games. I am so thrilled. The last time I spoke to Gerald on the phone was probably a month ago. And we were talking about something totally different, something to do with him getting, the All-Star game and securing gyms and things like that. And he told me that he was being inducted into the Richmond Academy Hall of Fame, ARC Hall of Fame. And I said, it's about time. And I'm so glad he found out. That ceremony's not till September. But I'm so glad he found out before he passed that they were putting him in the Hall of Fame, where he belongs, for sure. And I'm really, really happy about that. Just couldn't be more happy that he got to know that before he passed on. Gerald, we love you, buddy. And thank you all for listening out there. Thanks for all that shared stories on social media today. We'll see you guys next time.